Welcome to all of my YouTube members. In this month's video, I want to present you a full repertoire in the Semi-Slav for the black pieces. So we are starting with a position which you see right here. This was very often requested, and I try to make these monthly videos as orientated as possible towards my audience. So in case you have some wishes which you would like me to cover next, for next month I already got planned that I want to cover this line with H6. So I'm going to do this one for next month, that is for sure, because this has also been often requested. And therefore we are building also full repertoire for black, a very classical repertoire against d4. We already have many ideas here on this YouTube membership program, which you can all check out in case you have the subscription. And I tried to make this repertoire as fresh and as solid and as easy as possible. You might not, I can already spoil it, right? If you're looking for a super, aggressive repertoire and want to, learn a lot of forcing lines and long theory and so on, this is the wrong place for you. In general, in my recommendations, I like to give something as fresh as possible, which is not, heavily discussed by theory, and which hopefully does not involve learning long variations by heart. And I try to recommend many solid and easy lines in this repertoire, which of course means that you won't get super exciting attacking positions and so on, because it is not really my style of analyzing, also not really my style of playing. So this from the start. Now let's jump into the lines. Now, we are mostly focusing in this video on the move e3 and the move bishop g5. The video is probably going to take a bit longer, of course, usually like around 1 hour, just to have that said, because we got to cover a lot of different lines, because it is a pretty huge opening. Now, let me start off by giving you a couple of directions where we are going to. So we are mostly focusing on e3 and bishop g5 because those are by far the main continuations. In the other moves, like c takes d5, like g3 for example, and queen d3, and also queen b3, I will just give you guys some directions which I would be going for, without discussing too much theory, because they are less likely to happen in general, and I would argue not as critical as the main line, so it should be easier to just get a playable position there. In case you want me to cover that in more depth, then let me know in the comment section down below. But we are focusing a lot on the main lines with e3 and with bishop g5. Now, I would like to start by giving my directions here. After e3, my recommendation is to go a6. Which is already a little bit of a sideline compared to the main line with knight bd7. The thing I don't like here in general is that white just has many different setups, and many of them tend also to be quite forcing. Like, honestly, from both sides, this Meran was usually something I was not so happy with from both sides, because the positions are extremely dynamical and there's actually a lot of concrete theory here. And I would have been more happy in general with those anti-Meran lines, because I think they are generally quite solid for black as well and easier to play. But mostly my reasoning behind not going for knight d7 was just the classical lines in the normal Meran, because they tend to be quite sharp. Now the idea of a6 is that we want to wait for this bishop on f1 to move, and after that we can take on c4 and then get basically a pretty good version of some queen's gambit accepted, because the knight is already on c3. Of course, white has some other options. Here we are looking at b3, the main move, queen c2 as well. Of course, also the bishop move, bishop d3, c5, and also some other sidelines as well. Now, before we dive into that, let me go to bishop g5. By the way, what I didn't mention in the start, obviously you can find the PGN linked in the comment section down below. Just click on the link and there you will be redirected to the lecture study, where you can then also export it as a PGN. Now in bishop g5, I would like to recommend h6, which allows white two different options. The first one being bishop h4 and the second one being bishop takes f6. After bishop takes f6, what I like here in general is that the position is quite solid. We have the bishop pair. Obviously, white has a space advantage, but black has a very solid position. Now, this is the classical Moscow variation with bishop g5, and here I decided to recommend a pretty universal setup, which is that if white moves the bishop on f1, then we can take on c4, because then white has to spend another tempo with the bishop to take back, and then my recommendation is to go for the pretty rare setup with bishop d6, which has been played by many strong players, but is by far not the main line, because usually black chooses a development with g6 followed by bishop g7. The idea of bishop d6 is that we just want to castle next, then queen e7, and then play for the central break with either c5 or at the right time also to break with e5. So this is kind of the start here. Of course, we're going to go into more depth a bit later, but this is where we are going to. Now, the next one is bishop h4, which is probably the most theoretical lines of all of them, because now we are invited to win a pawn on c4, which we could have, by the way, also done one move earlier, but those lines are incredibly sharp. It usually goes on like this: b5, e5, h6, bishop h4, g5. And according to the strong engines and correspondence games, black is holding here, but the positions are just completely insane. There's often like 30, 40 move theory, and I don't really see the point in entering these lines from both sides, honestly. At least in the meantime, with engines being so strong and our opponents most likely being pretty well prepared here as well, just don't really see the point here. This line with h6 and bishop h4 included has a better reputation because now we are able to play g5, but also this is a huge theory. Black has is up a pawn, but white has pretty good compensation for it because we have our king is not so safe here in the center because of g5. White often has ideas to break on the king side with h4 as well. There are also many courses here already online, and if you're interested in that, then please check them out, but you are not on the right address here for those forcing lines. Now, what I would like to suggest here is the very solid line with bishop e7. Now, already here, many of our opponents definitely are going to take on f6, because also not everyone is ready for these complications after d takes c4. And after bishop e7, now we just want a solid game. Usually it continues with e3. And here I'm going to give you guys two different options. The first one, the most interesting and also rare option, is the move knight e4, which has not been played by many strong players so far. It was recently played in February by Boris Gelfand against Volodar Murzin. This is also how I got to know of the line. And it's quite rare. There are now, as I see, only 130 games here, and in these positions there are almost close to 3,000 games here. So it is quite a rare line, and I think quite interesting and very solid. But of course, as I said in the beginning, it's not like the most sharpest line. It's aimed to get a solid and easy position slash repertoire. Now, this is what we are going to look at in the end, the direction with knight e4, and we are also going to cover the line with short castle, where we can also get a pretty solid position without knowing too much theory. Okay, so this is kind of the start, what is going to wait for you in this video. Now let's have a look at everything from the beginning.